This is me suffering one of the worst wrist injuries that a climber could possibly face. A complete rupture in the central part of my triangular fibrocartilage complex, also known as my TFCC. Due to poor blood flow to the area, this injury may never completely heal on its own. And this is Matthias Brock McVitis, a V14 climber from Australia who also happens to be a physical therapist and one of the greatest dynoists to ever live. Over the next 9 weeks, he will be coaching me to improve my climbing as well as hopefully rehab my broken wrist so I can once again climb hard without any pain. Can I still train to achieve my dream of becoming the most jacked board lord to ever live? Well, let's find out. Alright, what is going on everybody? It's week 1 of the training plan and it's been about 3.5 months since my injury. Wrist is definitely feeling better, but it's annoying how slowly it's healing. Whenever I get like a finger tweak, it like low-key heals itself in like 3 days. And it's been like 3.5 months and it's still like not really close to being 100%. So, I mean, it does make sense because I guess there's like a hole in my wrist. So, you know, it's just how it goes. Today's session is going to be focused on tension and strength building. So we're going to be doing really tensiony boulders and also boulders that are like finger intensive but like at a low level. If you've ever seen me climb, you know that I'm pretty terrible at keeping tension through my feet. So hopefully these drills will help me be better at that. Cheers. This is probably a good time to let you all know why my wrists are so damn cooked. If you've watched any of my videos, you've probably seen me wear countless different wrist wraps, sometimes so tight that my hand turns purple. Well, just like a lot of things in life, it is unfortunately largely genetic. Positive ulnar variance is a condition in which the distal ulna bone is longer than the radius. This 2mm difference in bone length has been the main source of my pain and suffering for the past 1.5 years. Because every time I ulnar deviate my wrist and load my finger flexors, aka like half of all climbing moves, this bone will crash into my wrist joint, damaging all the surrounding tissue. Due to this, I have developed something called mid-carpal laxity in my right wrist, which I will make a video about in the future, as well as a torn TFCC in my left wrist, which is what we're dealing with here. This condition is also more prevalent in Asian and Black populations, which makes me think this condition is why I see a bunch of Asian climbers always taping up their wrists. Alright, that was a pretty fire session actually. This is definitely like the gym bro in me talking, but like the strength building circuit where you're able to just like do a bunch of boulders back to back with like 2 minutes rest in between until you like just can't anymore was some of like the most fun I've had in a while climbing. I just love being able to like try as hard as I can till I can't. Wrist feels okay. It didn't hurt at all like during the session, which was good. It's feeling maybe a little bit weak, but no like lingering pain, so that's good. Yeah, I'm really happy about this because like low-key my sleep has been a little weird, so I've been feeling like a little bit off, but hopefully we can continue this. The biggest changes I made week 1 is really locking in on reducing any aggravating factors. In the 3 months after my injury and before I started working with Matthias, I wasn't climbing a whole lot and was kind of on a sporadic schedule. And while my wrist was slowly improving, I would always manage to retweak it as soon as things felt any better. Knowing climbers, a lot of you can probably relate to this. My coach had me write down any and all possible moves that could possibly hurt it. These included, but were not limited to, aggressive underclings, gastons, right to left crosses, full crimping at steep angles, slopers, vertical pinches, dynamic latches, and the list goes on. As you can imagine, the moves that I was able to do at the beginning of these 9 weeks were incredibly basic in nature. I also was almost solely climbing on the Tension Board 1 because it is the board that I have by far the most experience with and the one that I could best tell whether or not a specific move would hurt or not. Continuing with the theme of reducing aggravating factors, my coach prohibited me from ever climbing 2 days in a row. So I would be doing 1 day on, 1 day off for the vast majority of my training plan. I actually quite like this system just because I would always feel quite fresh going into every session, but I did definitely miss climbing both days on the weekends. Alright, so week 2 of the training plan, feeling pretty good. Tomorrow we're supposed to get like 2 feet of snow, so I'm not gonna be able to come to the gym. So I was supposed to climb yesterday and tomorrow, but instead, after talking with my coach, we decided to combine these 2 sessions into today. So we're gonna be hitting a mega session today, which I'm very excited about. Fresh off of 2 days of rest. On the agenda today, we're going to be doing some tension activation drills into some limit bouldering. And we're also gonna do a bit of power endurance with a focus on heel hooks. So let's get to it. Cheers. For those of you who have dealt with TFCC injuries in the past, you might be a little bit confused at my symptoms. Underclings and slopers will make sense, but the fact that even like locking off on a crimp could hurt my wrist this much made me a bit confused as to what was going on. Back in February of this year, after having dealt with this injury for a few weeks, I decided to get an MRI, which is when I found out my TFCC was completely ruptured, as well as some other relatively concerning things. My symptoms are a bit confusing for just a TFCC tear, and I saw a wrist specialist who was also a bit confused as to what was going on. At one point, he even suspected that my DRUJ had deteriorated, which would have been an absolute disaster because that thing pretty much will never heal. However, after giving me an injection into my DRUJ and the pain still persisting, he concluded that this is probably not the case. After discussing with both my coach and this doctor, the full tear of the TFCC, along with other complications due to my ulnar impaction syndrome, is likely what is causing this bizarre set of symptoms. The TFCC is apparently incredibly complicated and can have a whole host of symptoms, especially in a sport like climbing that relies quite a bit on wrist stability. Alright, pretty solid session overall. Super long, super tired after that, but I'm happy. Did all the moves of a project that I have on the tension board. It's called Stash Mania. I've done it at 40 where it's V9. Nobody's logged it in the app at 45 yet, so if I do it, I'll probably give it V10, and so I'm pretty happy with that. Absolutely cannot wait until I can climb without any worry of pain, which unfortunately might still be a while, but at least I can feel like I'm like actually making progress again, which is good, because for a while it felt like I just couldn't really climb hard. Because one of the main goals of this 9-week period was to rehab my wrist as much as possible, my coach obviously prescribed me some wrist rehab exercises to do. One of the biggest changes my coach made to how I approach these wrist exercises was to always perform them at the start of every session during my warm-up, as well as on certain days when I'm not climbing. Before, I always would try to do my rehab exercises after I climbed, but this led to me both overdoing it at times as well as just not staying very consistent. Even though, like most people, I'm not the biggest fan of doing these rehab exercises, now that I have programmed it into my warm-up, it is basically just second nature, and I will continue to do them as a part of my warm-up, even if there's one day when my wrist is completely healed. Alright, week 3 of the training plan. I missed a day because I went skiing with some friends over the weekend. Just got done what should have been a good session. I had no pain in my wrist and everything felt good, but at the very end, somebody asked me to try one of their projects on the tension board, and I agreed, and I caught the last hold in like a 3-finger drag, and I didn't even like cut feet or anything, but I guess it just stretched something, and I felt like a sharp pain in my forearm and my hand. I don't know how bad it is, but it's honestly very, very difficult to stay positive. I mean, I love this sport so much, but sometimes it just feels like my body isn't meant for it. You know, I did powerlifting and bodybuilding for like 2.5, 3 years, had no injuries whatsoever. Back when I was skating, I mean, I was just as injury prone as I am now, and it kind of makes me think that perhaps there are just certain things my body is built to be able to do, and some things that it shouldn't do, you know. Yeah, I don't really know what to say, to be honest, but yeah, this is very tough for me. All right, what's going on? This is week 4 of the training plan. I'm in a lot better of a headspace than I was when I tweaked my forearm earlier last week. I've got like this buddy tipping going on, and I don't have any pain when I'm crimping with 4 fingers, but I can't really drag right now, and so I'm doing some rehab there. This new tweak kind of really made me realize that I need to kind of shift my mindset a little bit. So the remainder of these 9 weeks, I'm going to ultra focus in on rehab and just trying to get as close to being completely healthy as I can and not really be too worried about how well I'm performing. And in the meantime, I'm going to be doing more lifting and bodybuilding because I really love that. And even though it's not climbing. I'm somebody who always needs to do something physical almost every day, or I just start to lose it. So yeah, I'm excited for this session. The previous week was incredibly tough for me. I was just coming up from feeling optimistic about my wrist for the first time in months, and I get hit with yet another injury. While it was obviously very tough in the moment, one pretty big positive to come out of this was that it kind of triggered quite a foundational mindset change that has stuck with me ever since. When I had originally signed up and paid for coaching, I was hoping that it would have a big change in my climbing performance. But this week, I began to realize that the most important thing above all else is the ability to try hard and train, at least for me. Everything else is really just irrelevant and will come as a natural progression of things. I really started to shift my focus on becoming as healthy as I can be, as well as trying to improve my mental game with every session. Sorry about the sun. Overall, I had a pretty good session. Focused on micro crimps and heel hooks at less steep angles. Was almost able to repeat kitten paws at 20 degrees, which I've done before, but haven't really been full crimping a lot, so glad to see some improvement there. Still annoying though, because the left hand, which is usually my stronger hand for some reason, definitely feels very weak and kind of unstable on small holds and also slopers. It doesn't really hurt, it just feels kind of like weak and unstable, which is probably gonna be there for a while, unfortunately. But yeah, overall not too bad. I definitely feel like I'm better at climbing after doing all the technique drills that we've been doing. So even though I'm like physically weaker than I was at my peak, I do feel like I'm definitely a better climber. And so yeah, hopefully we can continue that going forward. All right, what is going on, everybody? This is week 5, I believe. So almost halfway through. I haven't had the best time so far, to be honest. Through no fault of the training plan or my coach. I think I've just been kind of unlucky. The forearm issue is already a lot better, but man, my wrist is just like, I think it's definitely getting better, but it's just, again, like, it's so slow. I think it's still gonna be a while before I try very hard on like wrist intensive climbs, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but we're going to try and stay positive. I think the most important thing is for me to have like a good mindset. You know, if I can still improve my finger strength and my technique, then I should be happy, right? And I think any day where I don't have pain is a major win, no matter what. Even if the session is awful, if I had no pain during it, then I have to treat it as a major win. So yeah, let's get to it. So this week I actually had a major breakthrough. I have experimented with a bunch of wrist wraps in the past, including the wrist widget, tape, wrist widget and tape, boxing wraps, and weightlifting wraps. While my right wrist has responded quite well to the weightlifting strap, wraps never have seemed to help the left wrist at all. Until for some reason, now. I don't know what prompted me on this day to try wearing the wrist widget again, but it all of a sudden felt so much more stable on a bunch of different holds, and it marked a huge turning point in this whole saga. Okay, that was one of the best sessions I've had in a very long time. I tried out like the wrist widget thing, which I've used before on my other wrist for this, because it's supposedly good for TFCC things, and in the past it hasn't worked. And I think that might be just because it was like really severe back then, but it felt so much more stable this time. And I could still feel it a tiny bit on certain moves, but overall it felt a lot stronger. And I'm really excited about this because, you know, I do have to be very careful that I don't overdo it now, but this is pretty huge, I would say. So yeah, I'm really excited actually. This is the best I've felt about my wrist situation in a while, so hopefully we can continue. I also think this is a good time to talk a little bit more about the specific rehab exercises that I've been doing. Like most exercises that are effective, they are incredibly basic in nature. The first two are isometric wrist flexion and extensions, where I do 5-second on-off repeaters in a wrist flexion or extension state. The third is a longer isometric hold in a supinated wrist position, resisting rotation, using some weight or bar. You can even do these using just your hands if you do not have access to weights. The most important part of these exercises is to simply stay consistent and not overdo it during the exercise. You should have very little, if any, pain during the exercise, but you should definitely feel your wrists working and have a slight forearm pump afterwards. Over time, I have added slightly more weight and have been able to do these for longer than I was before. However, the rate of progression on these exercises is quite a bit lower than what I'm used to because we are mostly working tendons that take quite a lot longer to strengthen than muscles. By the way, this is just one of 2 training blocks that I have with Matthias, and if you want to see more of my training with him when I'm healthy, be sure to subscribe.
Alright, what's going on? This is week 5 or 6, I think? Yeah, something like that. And I'm feeling really good, actually. Psych is definitely back to a certain degree. I'm now wearing like 2 different wrist wraps for both my wrists, but I've been able to climb without pain for quite a while, and I'm still like avoiding things that I think will irritate it, obviously, and I'll probably do that for like a long time, if not forever. But yeah, I feel like I'm getting definitely a lot better. Yeah, even though I might be like physically, my fingers might be weaker than they were back then, I think I'm definitely way better of a climber. Like I'm actually like using my feet, using my like hamstrings and my posterior chain a lot more, and I can like feel them working way better. My heel hooks have gotten a lot better for sure, and yeah, I think I've just been like a better climber overall. Today we're doing some micro crimping and power endurance stuff. I'm supposed to be deloading because I'm going to Redrocks next week, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. To be honest, I'm mostly going to Redrocks like for the vibes and for my friends. I don't have any like projects I'm really like psyched on, so I'm probably just gonna do some moderates. I don't really think a major deload is necessary, but yeah, I'm excited.
Now this is all great and all, but how did I get into this position in the first place? If you look at the video where my TFCC rupture happened, it really doesn't look like I was doing anything stupid. I was literally just doing a standard cross on pinches. The issue, unsurprisingly, is that I was having a little bit of nagging wrist pain for a few weeks before this that I kept putting off. The part of my TFCC that finally went was probably hanging on by a thread for a while, and any movement that was even a little bit wrist intensive probably would have torn it. Basically, I fucked around and found out. So if you're like me and have a tendency of overdoing things, this is your opportunity to stop ignoring that nagging issue you've been dealing with and get it checked out before anything worse happens.
Alright, so we're back from Redrocks. Had an okay trip. Wrist felt like pretty good, but still not 100%. However, it is getting to the point where I can pretty much do like the vast majority of like what I want to do during like most of my training sessions, which is really nice. Today we're going to be focusing on tiny little micro crimps, as well as practicing some heel hooks and doing a little power endurance. So yeah, let's get to it.
I had quite a bit of fun in Redrocks with my friends, but as I was saying, I was mostly there for the vibes and didn't want to push things too hard with my wrist. That being said though, climbing highlights or lowlights include having one of the worst flash punts ever, falling on the very last move of Dark Magic V8, which is this incredibly pumpy roof climb.
Come on. All the way.
I got you, I'm with you.
It's good.
Come on, keep going. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Oh!
I was also able to completely house the crux of this V10 called Unforgivable Curses, but unfortunately the V4 intro was kind of hurting my wrist a little bit, and so I didn't want to push it. But I was able to support some of my friends there as well, who were absolutely crushing, including my friend Luke, who did Meadowlark Lemon Stand, which was his first V12.
My go!
Alright, what's going on everybody? So, this is like week 8 or something, I think. So, almost the ending of the first cycle. While, you know, my gains in terms of climbing maybe are not as high as what I would have if I was completely healthy, the more important thing is that my wrist is actually feeling really good, which is amazing. It's really sick, and also I think it kind of shows that even if it like structurally might not ever like completely heal, like my body can adapt to it, and I can still like train really hard and eventually get back to doing like relatively wrist intensive movements. I've been extremely sick earlier this week. Like I had a stomach bug and like I was like throwing up for 2 days. So I'm feeling pretty deflated right now. We'll see how the session goes, but you know, I have my Wawa and I got my caffeine. So, you know, there's a lot of suffering going on in the world right now, but not in this car. I'm gonna be away in Spain next week, but I'm super excited for the next 9-week cycle because I think I'll actually be able to like train at near my full capacity. And so yeah, I'm super stoked.
One thing I realized from this week was just how nice it was to have a coach. Not for them to program a plan for you, but just to have somebody who you can talk to after every session, especially when you're not feeling too great or have some kind of concern. Having a coach who's also a physical therapist is also very nice because now you have somebody who can walk you through any small aches or pains that you're feeling.
Okay, wow. What a session to end it off on. That was like maybe the best session I've ever had. Kin pause, which is widely regarded as one of the hardest board climbs ever done. Today, I was doing it at 20 degrees and I was absolutely shitting on it. Like, it felt like I could almost run laps on it, which it's been super hard for me in the past. Supposedly only V8, but you know, it's like pure finger strength, and in terms of like pure finger strength, it's probably a little bit harder than V8, but it's just very basic. Yeah, fingers feel super strong, and then I did a V9 super easily at 40 after like crimping super hard for like an hour and a half. I also did a crux move of a project to have at 40 degrees. I did it at 30 degrees, but it felt really easy. So I'm super stoked. That was a fantastic session to end the 9 weeks off of. And yeah, I'm super excited to see what I can get done in this next training block.
So this takes us to today. I'm pretty confident that I'm probably the best climber that I've ever been right now. And this includes the shape I was in right before my injury. Yes, there are still moves that I will be avoiding for some time to prevent re-aggravating my injury, but I'm feeling very optimistic for the future, despite being genetically predisposed to having issues in my wrist when climbing. I can't lie, there were several times within this training block where I felt like I almost wanted to give up and find a new sport to obsess over, as I've done in the past, but something about climbing just keeps pulling me back despite everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next training block where I can hopefully focus more on climbing specific performance instead of mostly just rehab.